So, this is usually the point where I'd mention that we don't run ads on this show, but we do have a website where you can support us by buying hats and stickers and patches. Instead, I want to do two things. First, I want to say thank you to those who have been super supportive on the social media as well as in the store. So, thank you, Ray Tomlinson, and Henrik Strand, and Kyle Moore, and Fred Greyho, and Fred, Kevin McKinney, and Aaron Matthew, Robbie Bircher, and Andrew Holly. You guys are the best, and I'm super glad you like the show. Second, I messed up. There's a bunch of popping and noise on my audio in this episode, and I don't know why or how to fix it. I did my best with effects, but it's still there. I cut out as much of me talking as possible, since it's not really about me anyway. But bear with me. If you've ever wondered what it's like to take an epic family road trip in a Cruise America RV, it's worth hearing about my guest's experience. All right, here's episode 4. Thanks for listening, and hope you enjoy it.
I'll tell you a funny story. We were sitting in the Tetons, and I'd pull over, and I was pulling over at like every 150 yards, taking photos. And we were in a particular turnout, and I was outside and I was taking pictures, and the sun had stuck her head out the window, and she's like, "Dad, can you move the RV forward so I can take a picture?"
Did you see your car come all the way off the ground?
Hello, friends. So glad to have you back on the All Terrain Podcast. If this is your first time, this is the show about going places where I, Mike Henderson, stop adventure travelers on the road and ask them for directions to Burning Man. This is episode 4, and today we're talking with an old friend about epic road tripping in a Cruise America RV. Captain Dave Johnson is an old school mountain biker, sailor, geologist, lab tech, dad, photographer, and adventurer, and he blows stuff up every day at Sandia Labs in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Dave and I did field work back in college at the University of New Mexico, where we drove up into the Jemez Mountains of New Mexico to sample a couple hundred water wells on the Rio Calaveras. And we did that every week, even in the snow. Along the way, we sat in hot springs, got field trucks stuck in the snow, ate burritos, got speeding tickets on the reservation, and Dave even once blew up the motor in a Suburban. Captain Dave, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike. That was quite the warm welcome. I appreciate it.
You remember that? Remember blowing the rod out of that truck?
How can you ever forget pistons laying in the middle of a road from your vehicle?
I remember that guy. He loaded that Suburban up onto the tow truck, and it almost dragged it to the ground. It was almost sitting on the axle. And he's like, "Ooh, that's a heavy truck."
Yeah.
That was funny.
Yep.
So you got the rank of captain as
Yes, sir.
as a pilot of a small sailboat. Do you still have that boat?
Indirectly, my sister owns it right now.
Ah.
I haven't sailed in a few years, but most of the water here that I was interested in sailing on kind of dried up.
So I think we're ready to just jump on into it. I think it's going to be an interesting one because what you did was you wanted to do an epic road trip from Albuquerque to, you went as far as what, Teton, right?
Yellowstone, correct.
So in a Cruise America RV.
Yes.
So that's something that I've been looking at doing for a really long time. So when I saw you were doing this, I was like, oh, that's going to be cool. I'm going to want to hear about that. And it seems like an interesting way to travel. Seems like a pretty fun way to travel. I guess you guys had a pretty epic time.
It was it turned into a very positive experience. It was a really good trip, and I've got 3 young daughters, and one of the main ideas was to get them out and do, like you say, an epic road trip, but give them a format where they could hang out and relax. And my father threw us in an RV as children, and we drove across the country, and it just 1 + 1 turned into a really good thing.
Cool. All right, so first question is, who's in your crew, family or friends? I think you just answered that question, but tell us a little bit about the family.
Well, like I say, I've got 3 young daughters. They're Ren, she's 13, and the twins, Sonnet and Pippin, they're 10. And I just felt like one of the big inspirations for me was I came across a phrase, sometime last year, and it says, "You regret what you don't do." And I really started to think about that. And one of the things that I don't feel like I've done enough is put the girls, into a vehicle and, take them out and show them the grand United States. And so it was time to do that. And I explored a lot of possibilities. It was, did I want to do it in an RV? Did I want to tow a trailer? I kept my options open, and in the end, the RV just kind of fell into place.
Cool. What do you guys usually stick closer to home on vacations and adventures and whatnot?
We've been doing a lot of, car camping around the state past couple of years, and that's been going really, really well. It started with, it literally started with the girls, sleeping in a tent in the backyard in the middle of winter, and they loved it. They were out there in freezing temperatures, rain, snow, night after night after night, and it went so well. I thought, well, wow, boy, it's time to hit the road. And I kind of put them in a little bit of a program. So I started buying camping equipment, and I started teaching them how to cook, and then we'd use the stove and stuff out in the backyard, and pretty soon their skills were such that we started picnicking. So we'd decide what we were going to make. We'd throw it in the car, and we'd go to the woods, and they'd get out, and we'd make some kind of meal, and then that started leading to overnighters. And once we became pretty proficient at overnighting, then it was like, okay, it's time to hit the road. So it was kind of a natural progression. It was a natural progression.
Cool. Let's see. So tell us about the RV. Tell us about the vehicle. What's the Cruise America RV like?
So I kept seeing these RV driving around, and the slogan's pretty easy to remember, Cruise America. So I Googled them, and I found them. So I started doing a little bit of research online, and essentially they have three models. They've got a 19-foot, they've got a 24-foot, and they've got a 30-foot.
Right.
So it just I kind of wanted the 19 was too small for the four of us, and I thought the 30 would be a little big as far as maneuverability.
Right.
Backing it in, and I've heard that Yellowstone and Rocky Mountain National Park, they get kind of busy, so parking is always an issue.
Right.
So we ended up going with the I think it was like 24 or 25 foot, and honestly the size was perfect.
Really?
Yeah, for the four of us. It'll sleep six. I took the bed over the cab, and I kind of made the girls switch it up in the back, so they were kind of rotating between the bed over the table and then the main bed in the back.
Okay, cool.
So we rotated, and it was important to me to one of the things that was attractive about the RV to me was that we could do our own cooking.
Right.
And that's been a really big emphasis. I've been emphasizing that the girls learn how to cook, and we've got our little, everybody has their little menu items that they make. So a big part of it was their what do you say, their involvement. So each and every one of them, all of us, cooked, and out of a full 2-week road trip, we actually ate out one time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we cooked and cleaned and together practically the whole time.
Yeah,
so that was, again, that was a really, really positive aspect of it. We didn't spend a lot of time sitting in restaurants waiting for people to to help us, and like I said, I want the girls to have skills that they can fall back on as they get older.
Yeah, so I mean, that seems like one of the major, and that's one of the questions too, is what do you eat? So we'll skip to that one right now. an RV that size is pretty much like cooking in your own house, but a little smaller. So it's got
It
everything you
is.
need.
It had a refrigerator, had a freezer, three burner gas stove, sink, and some countertop. So we pretty much cooked, you know, whatever uh, we could. We actually had a menu, and the three different girls, they all have things that they make. Ren makes tacos, Sana makes chili, um, and Pippin makes spaghetti. But and they can do other stuff than that. But that's kind of their main thing. So we ended up probably going to the grocery store wherever we were. We'd end up at the grocery store every 2 or 3 days, and we'd just stock up and head back out. So it was, in a way, it was just like business as usual,
Yeah,
except we were on the road.
yeah. I guess the fridge fits everything, and everything works. Seems like it works pretty well if you're gonna cook all that stuff. I saw all your pictures from that. Looked like some pretty good eating.
Oh yeah, it was home cooking every day,
That's
no doubt.
nice. That's
Yeah,
nice.
and traveling around Colorado, they've got they're kind of like their main brand supermarket is called the City Market, and I remember the City Market in Colorado as far back as you know the 70s and 80s, as long as I've been going there. So, and they're everywhere. So they're really good quality grocery store, and like I say, every 2 or 3 days we'd end up at the grocery store buying supplies.
Cool. Um, so one of the questions that we always ask is how do you carry your gear? Because usually you're traveling in a regular vehicle, but I assume that a vehicle that big has plenty of storage.
Well, and it's interesting that you put it that way. The the 25-foot RV was I would say that it was actually the perfect size for the four of us, but it was a little light on storage. So we were constantly negotiating suitcases and backpacks and stuff on the floor.
Mm.
So you have to be really highly organized, and I think you want to try and cut down what you take with you. Um, so and it kind of sounds a little bit strange in that the size was perfect, but it was kind of light on stuff.
Does it have exterior stuff? I mean, can you throw like kayaks and stuff in it, or like camp setup? Do you throw that outside? Does it have outside storage, or does it all go in?
They have external storage, especially toward the rear. They have compartments, and the larger the RV, the larger that storage is.
Right.
So they're kind of like internal compartments, but you get to them from the outside. And there was a conspicuous lack of ladders to access the roof,
Oh,
and
really?
I think that's a liability. I don't think they want their customers, scampering around tying stuff onto the roof.
That's probably not a bad idea there.
But I mean, like with a private RV, you've got ladders and you've got racks up there where you can do exactly what you're saying. You can store stuff on the roof, and you often see bike racks and external, compartments in the trailer hitches
Right, right.
as well on a private rig. So on a private rig, you would have those additional
So it
options.
holds a bunch of water too. Like you don't have water bottles bouncing around in the back of the truck, right?
Yeah, that's that was part of my education. I've never done any RVing other than what I did as a kid with my family. So essentially, there's three tanks. There's your freshwater tank. You've got your what's called your gray water tank, and you also have your black water
Right.
tank. So the gray water is like sink and shower drain, and then the black water is exactly what you think it is.
It's the poop.
So exactly, and um, that's another good point because you become aware of your different tank capacities pretty quickly, and that starts to become kind of integral into your travel plan.
Uh
You
huh.
know, where's my next RV dump? Where am I going to get water?
How much water does it
How
hold?
long? It varies with size. The bigger the RV, the larger the tanks. I think ours was. I think I had a 30-gallon freshwater tank. I think it was on the order of 20, 25
Mm-hmm.
gray water, and I think the black water tank was around 15.
Ooh, that doesn't seem like a lot.
We were given the opportunity. I would dump those tanks every day,
Really?
and yeah, by the end of 48 hours, I'm sitting there going, okay, where's our next RV dump? You know, so, but again, on that that those may be options if you're looking for RVs. Different RVs may have different size tanks, and again, once you start getting up into a 30 footer or larger, they've got larger tanks. But with four people, I was having to dump those tanks every 48 hours.
Wow. And those, I imagine those dump like with a hose that comes out of the bumper. So you've got to pull the hose out,
Yeah, yep.
just like a standard RV
you
stuff.
want to bring you exactly. You want to bring your gloves, and um, one of the interesting things that I ran across was when we hit Wyoming, we crossed over into Wyoming. The first town we came to was a little place called Bags, Wyoming, and driving up the street. I mean, not a very big place, but I noticed the sign. It actually had a public RV dump, and I'm like, huh, what? And so I followed the signs, and it's just part of that small town's gig. They had a public RV dump, and it was you could use it for a donation.
Huh.
Pretty handy.
Otherwise, what you have
You
to
know,
go to a. I mean, I've never had an RV. Where do you dump those things?
you start looking for RV dumps, and uh, you start to become familiar pretty quick with RV parks,
Right.
KOAs. So, and not only so once I kind of got that on my radar, I started looking for those, and they had public RV dumps in certain places in Colorado and Wyoming. So whenever I could find one of those, we'd stop there, or um, RV parks. We kind of diced it up, and that was kind of the plan all along, was to look for, sometimes we'd just, find some primitive camping, in the forest, national forest. Other times we stayed at KOAs, or found RV parks, and I had to try it once or twice. I even parked, like in the back of a hotel or motel or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
um, we did a little bit of everything, and then we even stayed. A lot of the Forest Service campgrounds have um, RV spots,
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
and
Sure they will.
most any place with RV spots are going to have an RV dump.
Tell me a little bit more about the sleeping situation. So the RV that you rented it's like a Class C, right? So it looks like a van in the front.
Yeah, so you had the bed over the cab, the kitchen table folded down into a bed. That one was kind of short, so it came in really handy for the girls. And then there was kind of, I think it might have been a queen size bed in the back
Mm-hmm.
next to the bathroom. And I just felt like, uh, so I put the girls on a rotation schedule. So two of them would sleep together in the queen bed, and then one would sleep by themselves on the over the table that dropped down into a bed, and then they just rotated, so they all got a little bit of everything.
Right, right. How many
And
nights?
then every once in a
How many nights were you guys out?
while, we were out a good 14 nights or so.
Oh, that's
We were, yeah, we left on I think we left on a Saturday morning, and we came back 2 weeks later on a Sunday morning.
cool.
Yeah, it was, and like I say, we ended up driving almost. Well, we probably actually did end up driving every day, even if we stayed in a campground for more than one day, like we did at Yellowstone and Rocky Mountain National Park. We would, we didn't tow a vehicle with us, so the RV was how we got around too. So we ended up driving pretty much every day.
Was that inconvenient? I mean, how much do you have to pack up to get rolling?
Not at all. If you had hookups, if you had water and electrical, and you had sewer hookups, you just had to remember to spend 5 or 10 minutes to disconnect the electrical, water, and sewer, and then you were on your way. So it wasn't that inconvenient at all. In parts of Yellowstone and Rocky Mountain National Park, some of the attractions, for lack of a better word, they can get really crowded, and there's tons of cars, and there's lines of cars in and out, and so you jump in line, and we got so lucky so many times. We'd be stuck in a line, and an RV would pull out like 20 feet in front of us. That happened at least twice. It happened in Yellowstone. We had an RV pull out right in front of us, and it also happened to us in Rocky Mountain National Park, where an RV took out, and we were the next RV in line.
That's awesome.
Yeah, middle of summer, those two places get really busy.
So I guess you a little bit of luck and a little bit of patience, you can get by driving something so big.
Well, yeah, and you learn how to parallel park a 25-foot rig really quick.
Yeah.
It's you rely on your mirrors, and you can. It doesn't take long at all before you're like, oh yeah, I can parallel park in that.
Yeah, totally.
Well, and then once you're parked, there'd be times when we'd park and it's like, okay, hey, let's make lunch.
Right.
You know, so we park, turn off the vehicle, and next thing you know, we're making lunch, and then we get out and we go check out the attractions.
Yeah. Well, and you can hang out there too for a while, or just go for a bit longer a walk than you'd otherwise plan than you would if you had a car. Just do a little more walking.
Yeah. So I think ultimately, you're probably going to tow a smaller vehicle with you, but and also the RV concept. I just kind of wanted to explore the concept in general. Is it something that I'm interested in the future? Do I want a trailer? Do I want an RV? Do I want an off-road camper? I think you've seen some of the iterations I'm going through there.
Yeah.
So it was partly, I mean, it was a good way to get the girls out, and they're not intimidated. They got their own little, traveling palace, but it was also kind of an exploratory opportunity for me as well.
Well, what's your conclusion?
It's a great way to travel. It's a fantastic way to travel, and I could see going in that direction. They're ungainly. We were the particular road routes that we were doing mountain pass after mountain pass after state after state, so they're fairly ungainly for, that kind of driving. But, there'd be times where I'd be like, oh, what am I doing? Why am I here? And some, 60-foot bus would, be going in the other direction. I'm like, okay, yeah, no big deal.
Is there any,
So
do you have any particularly hairy moments out there?
I had a couple of, like, what would you call them? Conversations with myself, especially in Colorado, in between Durango and Silverton. They kind of do away with shoulders on some of those mountain passes, and you start downshifting, and it gets your attention real quick. A couple of moments where I kind of had to like remind myself to breathe and relax.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds sketchy for sure.
So no, I could actually, but on the flip side, it's a great format, and when we would stay at a KOA or when we would stay at an RV park, you would just see these places fill up, and there's a lot of camaraderie there. These people are all out driving around the country, and so it's a great format. I'm not sure you're certainly not going to be going off road, and maybe you're going to want to stick to the highway more or less.
I imagine that thing doesn't require a winch, doesn't require snatch straps or tow straps or sand mats or anything like that. You don't carry any recovery gear and something like that.
Yeah, I don't even think I bothered. No, actually, I did. I was going to say I don't think I even bothered to carry a shovel. If you get matter of fact, another one of their gigs is that they don't even want you changing tires. So if you get a flat tire, you gotta call their mobile network, and they'll come out and change the tire for you.
Really? Does it have a tire on it, I assume?
What it doesn't have is a jack and like a lug wrench.
Really?
Then now that you mention it, I don't recall seeing a tire anywhere. But they specifically say they've got a little informational video that you watch before you ever even do it. And it's like, you will not change if you get a flat tire. Here's the number that you call, and somebody will come out and change that tire for you.
Huh. So I guess you
Yeah,
better not be out of cell phone range, huh?
boy, that was a huge issue. We left Duray, Colorado, and I don't think I had a signal. Well, very, very limited. But, throughout northern Colorado and Wyoming, it was rare to have cell phone coverage.
So one of the questions we ask on the podcast usually is, "What do you use for communication?" But I guess in an RV, you don't necessarily need a CB or a ham radio or something like that. Just a cell
Nope.
phone,
Yeah. Yeah, the girls, they had their little mini tablets.
right?
So they were always on the hunt for free Wi-Fi. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
critical.
they came to love KOAs. KOAs have free Wi-Fi.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so it was always, yeah, where's the next KOA?
right. What so you spent most of your time actually in campgrounds or KOAs. What does a KOA cost to park an RV there?
I think the going rate for 24-foot RV, we were paying on the order of about $50 a night.
Hmm.
And KOA, they've got electrical hookup, they've got water, sewer, free Wi-Fi, of course, and a pool. So the
Ooh.
girls, they were continually, like I say, they had their eye out for the next KOA.
I remember the handful of times we stayed at KOAs camping when I was a kid was the pool was a pretty big selling point for that.
Yeah, and yeah, yeah, the twins, they'd be in their swimsuits and out the door before I even get parked.
I guess they
Yeah,
could just jump out and change, huh? That's what's the good about
yeah,
having
they
a taking your house with you.
yeah. There was I think we were in Yellowstone one morning, and I got to the point where the girls would all be asleep. I was still kind of on my regular schedule, so I'd be up first thing in the morning, and I'd get up and just start driving, um, and go into wherever it was we were going to go that day. And I remember Pippin one morning. She was I the other two girls were still asleep, and Pippin was sitting back there at the table, and I'm pulling out of the campground, and Pippin's like, Dad, this concept of driving your house around is pretty cool.
So she bought into it, huh?
Oh, she's RV this and RV that now. She's
Nice.
gonna own an RV. Yeah, she's gonna own an RV when she grows up.
Sweet. We'll have to get her. I have to get her on YouTube, looking up all the amazing RVs you can buy.
Yeah, yeah.
What while you guys were out there, what do you use for navigation? How do you get around?
Um, well, I've always had a fondness for paper maps, so I usually had some kind of paper map, if only as a backup. But I was always Googling. I always had Google Maps open, and I had a route planned out. And as long as you load your route before you lose your signal, you can keep the route. But if you're out in the middle of nowhere, and you're kind of lost, so it was kind of handy to have a paper backup.
Did you take the gazetteers or the foldouts?
Boy, I had an atlas, so I had like a spiral bound atlas, and especially when we were going through national forests, I was continually on the lookout for dispersed or primitive camping. So I was looking for dirt roads where I could pull off, and obviously I couldn't do anything too crazy, but so I usually have a national forest map handy if at all possible.
How does
I
that
kind of had all three.
how does the RV work do for dispersed camping?
Well, again, I would be looking for stuff that was right off the main road, maybe a forest road, like a small Forest Service road that cut off a main highway or something like that, and you wouldn't, because obviously there's grades of road, and sometimes they're graded and they're maintained, and other times they're not, and you can do okay on a fairly well maintained dirt road as long as it's been graded fairly recently. So um, trying to do some primitive or dispersed camping was a big goal of mine. So I usually had a paper map with me.
So what? I guess if you go down a dirt road and you get a flat tire and you're without
Yeah,
a tire or permission to change a tire, you're pretty hosed if something bad happens there.
yeah. Again, yes, and but at least you got all the creature comforts of home.
Yeah, that's true. How does that thing? Does it come with solar panels or a generator or what? Or batteries? How does that work?
It had everything. It had auxiliary batteries. It had a generator, and up on the roof they had solar panels.
Really?
They're pretty Yeah, they're pretty well equipped these days.
So you didn't have to worry too much about using up power. I guess when the car's running, it's probably charging those batteries too. So it seems pretty self-sufficient.
Yes. Yeah, we always had power. There was a little, you'd have a little green light if everything was being charged off the solar panels,
Yeah.
for instance.
Uh,
You could see that it was sunny and the solar panels were working. They were charging the auxiliary batteries, and then like you say, when you're driving, they're getting charged as well. Uh, the generator, we used the generator mostly for air conditioning.
ah,
The first part of the trip it was really hot, and we'd pull over and hit the generator and turn on the AC right away. You got to have you got to have 30 amps to run the AC. So the auxiliary batteries and the solar panel won't run the AC.
hmm.
That's a that brings up an interesting point. One of the things that I didn't quite understand as I left the RV place is that you pay for the generator by the hour.
Oh,
Period.
really?
I think it, yeah, I think it was like 250 an hour. Um, so I thought you got maybe you had like an allotment or some kind of quota, and then once you went over the quota, but that ended up not being the case. Um, which still, I think the whole trip we ended up running the generator for about 25 hours, and I think they charged like 250 an hour
Huh. And so
per generator.
so then is there a monitor you can tell how long it's running? So you can tell?
They they do. They have a counter. Uh, and that was an interesting progression. At first we'd pull over and we'd hit the generator and we'd turn the AC on, and we got pretty savvy at all the different operating systems. But as the trip wore on, we used the generator less and less, or we were more careful to use it when we had like electrical at like a
Oh,
campground.
right, right.
But I think it also cooled off and it wasn't as hot. We didn't need it for the AC as much.
So how was tell us about the process of obtaining one of those RVs and getting underway with it. How does it work?
I, that is one of the wonders of the world. I thought it was going to be a nightmare, and I put the process off, just because I felt like I was going to be walking into a used car dealer, and it was going to be a real hassle. But I'm telling you, it could not have been a more welcome process. I I actually reserved the RV online, so you can do all the paperwork online, and essentially you you show up, you pick it up, they give you, they direct you to a little informational video, take your credit card info, and off you go. It couldn't have been less hassle
Really?
free.
And so,
It was it was amazing, Mike. I I'll tell you this. I was so hesitant at first to do this that by the time I was like ready, I was like, okay, the trip's coming up. It's, I got to go, rent this RV. When I finally went in there, the dates that I wanted had sold out.
ooh,
Uh, and so um, I was like, okay, but that also, that put me on the property, and I met the people, and I was like, oh hey, this is going pretty good. So I just there was a lot of flexibility in the schedule. So I just at that point I was, I had crossed over my threshold So I went ahead and booked it for the next available time. And the the manager, Cruise America here in Albuquerque, he was just fabulous. He was mellow. He was laid back. He's like, oh yeah, don't worry about that, and oh no problem. Uh, it turned again. It was one of those unexpected things where it turned out to be, in its own way, kind of a highlight because it was not a bad experience. If anything, it was a positive experience. It's like, I'm looking for excuses to rent an RV based on how well it went with them.
Really? So
Oh,
how do you
absolutely.
well so um Cruise America has like a lot in Albuquerque with a bunch of RVs sitting on it?
They do. And I don't, again, it's kind of our own local phenomena. Um, I Googled the address and I was like, okay, I'm going to drive by this place and check it out and see what it looks like. And the first couple of times I couldn't even find it.
Huh.
And I'm like, this, and that kind of made me more skeptical. I'm like, what is going on? It's supposed to be right here. And, there's street views on Google. Um, so it actually took me, I was only doing it in my spare time. And when I could, and finally, I'm like, this has got to be the place. So I turned in, and what there was like a car lot in front, and the RVs were behind a fence in the back. Uh, so yeah, they've actually got a fleet
Really?
of, yeah. So they have a fleet here, and pretty much anywhere you go, there's going to be a fleet of RVs sitting somewhere ready for you.
Okay, so how I think I looked up the cost, and the cost was, it is what it is. You pay by the night, and then do you pay by the mile as well?
So what you do is, this was a learning experience. I think they charged, I want to say 35 cents a mile. And so what you do is you say, okay, I want to rent this for 2 weeks. And then you estimate your mileage as best you can. And when we sat down, I estimated 1,500 miles. And so that was part of the initial estimate.
Hmm.
So, you're not flying blind. So um, you walk away knowing how much it's going to cost you. It's not a real mystery.
And so what do you think what did it end up costing you, like, say, per night total?
My rough number was about 200,
200 a night?
200 a night.
That's not terrible.
And
Plus gas.
a, a two bedroom hotel room with a kitchenette for 4 people is going to be at least, 200 bucks a night.
Right.
And you're not going to be getting in and driving it, wherever you want to
Right.
go.
It's an experience
So,
on top of that.
oh my gosh, again, that was part of it. The whole concept was kind of exploratory. I wanted to go places I'd never been, so Yellowstone and Rocky Mountain National Park kind of bubbled up to the top,
Right.
and I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it in a different way, and I wanted them to have a good time, and the trip exceeded expectations on all of those levels.
Cool. So tell us,
Yeah.
I know it's the end of towards the end here, but tell us about your itinerary real quick. Run through where you went.
So I wanted to explore. I wanted to see some things that I'd never seen, but I also wanted to go places I liked. So we ended up kind of going through southern Colorado. We went to Durango, Silverton, Ray. Then we headed on up to Steamboat. I had never been that far north in Colorado, so we spent the night at Steamboat. Then we headed into Wyoming and on up to Jackson, which was a lovely little town, but it was kind of psycho with people.
Jackson's
I could
cool.
see, yeah, Jackson. I was just, I want to go back there. And then so Tetons and Yellowstone. We spent 3 nights at Yellowstone. Kind of drove around and saw everything we could see. Then we came back kind of the way we went, but we ended up more towards central Colorado and ended up hitting Rocky Mountain National Park. That was kind of a fluke. That was one of those things that almost didn't happen, but because I insisted on coming back a different way, basically all we had to do was turn left, and there was Rocky Mountain National Park.
Nice.
And I'm glad we did, because when we hit the park, the girls were just like looking out the windows, and they're like, "Daddy, can we stay here?" And I'm like, "Well, I built, there's some extra time." We ended up spending 3 nights
Oh
there.
wow, that's a lot of extra time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it was just, we had elk wandering around camp. I mean, you'd wake up and there'd be elk all over the place, and they'd be going through whatever, everybody's stuff. And then, let's see, we came down. We did some more mountain passes, and we ended up in Leadville, uh, Highway 285, and then we spent the night in Alamosa, the last night in Colorado, and after that we came back in.
Cool.
So, we had estimated 1,500 miles, and when I got back and he looked at the mileage, we had actually driven 2,500
Oh
miles.
wow.
So I owed him an extra couple $100 for that, but it was so well worth it. And some of those, the generator, you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to cost an arm and a leg, and it really, in the end, it really doesn't. And I think I ended up paying a couple $100 for the extra 1,000 miles that we drove.
Right. But you
Yeah,
don't have to. You don't own an RV, and you don't have to pay for the RV, and you don't have to store the RV. You don't have to maintain the
exactly.
RV.
Yep.
So that's kind of nice.
Yep. Yeah, and now I know what kind of RV I want, if I'm going to do that, or would I rather have a trailer? I gathered a lot of information.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like a pretty amazing trip. It was really cool to see all your pictures and really cool to hear about it. Kind of wish I could have
Thank
gone
you,
with
Mike.
you.
It was a blast, and Yellowstone and Rocky Mountain National Park are definitely a must do item.
Yeah, you know what? I we've been thinking about totally copycatting that trip from our side and doing and heading up there. So this might be the impetus we need to commit to that one for sure.
You bet. Absolutely. I wholeheartedly endorse, like you say, you don't own it. You don't have to pay the insurance. You don't have to maintain it. You don't have to store it. If it breaks, you don't have to fix it. And the kids love it because, they got a safe and secure place to stay. And it was a wonderful experience all around.
Awesome. And girls feel the same way.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. It was hard. Sometimes it was hard to get them out of the RV. I'll tell you a funny story. We were sitting in the Tetons, and I'd pull over, and I was pulling over at like every 150 yards, taking photos. And we were in a particular turnout, and I was outside and I was taking pictures, and Son had stuck her head out the window, and she's like, "Dad, can you move the RV forward so I can take a picture?"
Oh my god.
Needless to say, I was not impressed. But it was awfully cute, you know. In hindsight, you're just like going, "Oh my God, that kid's adorable."
Right, right. Yep.
And who can blame him? What the heck? And she eventually got out. And in the end, she was the only one that did get out at that particular spot.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here we are at the end of the podcast. It's time to set up the tent and crack some beers. Captain Dave, great catching up with you, and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you setting this up.